Your father married you off to a Native American because you were fat, but he loved you like no one else. Samantha needed air. The laughter and cruel comments from the guests at her father's 60th birthday party echoed through the house, but nothing hurt more than the words she had just overheard through the slightly open window. Honestly, I don't know what to do with Samantha anymore. At 24 and carrying all that weight, no decent man will want to marry her. Richard Anderson said to a group of friends in the garden, "Sometimes I think it would be better if she lived far away from here. I'm ashamed to introduce her at my business meetings." Tears began streaming down Samantha's face before she could even fully process what she had heard. 24 years of life, of trying to please her father, of diets that never worked, of hiding behind baggy clothes and forced smiles. And still, she was never enough for Richard. Unable to bear another minute in that house full of people judging her, Samantha slipped out the back door and ran into the yard. Her legs trembled, not just from the effort, but from the pain that seemed to tear her chest apart inside. She took refuge behind the large mango tree at the far end of the property, away from prying eyes and malicious whispers. That's when she realized she wasn't alone. Sitting on a wooden bench near the flower seedlings was a man she didn't recognize. He had long dark hair, sun-bronzed skin, and wore simple but well-kept clothes. Beside him were several handmade crafts carefully arranged on a colorful cloth. The man watched her for a few seconds without saying a word. Then, with careful movements, he pulled an embroidered handkerchief with colorful threads from his pocket and approached her. "Here," he said, offering the handkerchief, "for the tears." Samantha hesitated but finally accepted it. The fabric was soft and carried a faint scent of herbs she couldn't identify. "Thank you," she murmured, drying her face. "Are you one of the guests?" "Not exactly. I'm Dakota. I came to sell some pieces for the party decorations. Your mother, Mrs. Jennifer, hired me last week." There was something in his voice that soothed her. His gaze wasn't pitying, it was understanding, as if he knew exactly how she felt. "People can be very cruel," Dakota continued softly. "But that says more about them than about you." Before Samantha could respond, footsteps approached. Richard appeared in the yard, clearly annoyed. "Samantha, what are you doing out here? The guests are asking for you." She instinctively shrank back. Her father eyed Dakota suspiciously, noting the closeness between them. "And you? Who are you?" Richard asked, using the authoritative tone he reserved for intimidating people. "Dakota Rivers, sir. I came to deliver the crafts Mrs. Jennifer ordered." Richard looked the man up and down, taking in his simple clothes, Native American features, and calloused hands from manual labor. Suddenly, a wicked idea began forming in his mind. Dakota Rivers. Where do you live?" "On a reservation about 2 hours from here, near Sedona, but I spend a lot of time in town selling my pieces." Richard smiled, but it was a cold smile Samantha knew well. The same one he wore when closing a deal that only benefited him. "Are you married, Dakota?" "Dad, what are you doing?" Samantha tried to intervene, but Richard ignored her completely. "No, sir, I'm single." "Interesting. Very interesting indeed." Richard began circling them like a predator cornering its prey. "You know, I have a proposition for you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. "What kind of proposal?" asked Dakota, keeping his voice calm. "My daughter here needs a husband, and you seem like a hard-working, honest man. How about you two get married?" The silence that followed was deafening. Samantha felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. "Dad, have you lost your mind?" she managed to stammer. "I'm being practical, Samantha. You're already 24 with no marriage prospects, and Dakota here could benefit greatly from this union." Richard took out his wallet and began counting some bills. "I can offer $5,000 as a dowry. That's good money to start a new life." Samantha wanted to disappear. The humiliation was so overwhelming she could barely breathe. But then something unexpected happened. "I accept," Dakota said calmly. "Dakota, no!" Samantha shouted. You don't have to do this. But he kept speaking as if she hadn't said a word. I accept marrying your daughter, Mr. Anderson, but I won't take the money. Richard looked confused. What do you mean you won't take it? Every man accepts a dowry. Not me. If I marry Samantha, it's because I want to, not for money. But that doesn't make sense, Richard muttered. It does to me, Dakota replied, looking straight at Samantha. When can we have the ceremony? You're both insane, Samantha exploded. I won't marry a stranger just because my father decided I'm a burden. Do you have a better option? Richard asked cruelly. Because from what I see, this might be your only chance to leave my house. Her father's words felt like a slap. Samantha looked at Dakota, expecting pity or disgust in his eyes, but found only serenity. You don't have to decide now, he said softly, but the offer stands. In the days that followed, the Anderson household descended into chaos. Jennifer, Samantha's mother, swung between disbelief and anger at her husband. Richard, how could you do such a thing? She kept asking. Our daughter isn't some object to be bargained with. I'm solving a problem, Jennifer. You're the one always complaining that Samantha can't find a boyfriend. But not like this. This is medieval. Samantha, meanwhile, locked herself in her room and refused to discuss the matter. But she couldn't stop thinking about Dakota's calmness, the way he had looked at her without judgment. 3 days after the gathering, Dakota showed up at the Andersons' door. I came to talk to Samantha, he announced to Jennifer, who answered, She's not seeing anyone. Please, Mrs. Anderson, just a few minutes. Jennifer hesitated, but something in the young man's sincerity moved her. Samantha, she called upstairs, someone's here to see you. If it's my father, tell him I'm dead, came the muffled reply from the bedroom. It's not your father, it's Dakota. A long silence followed, then the sound of footsteps coming downstairs. Samantha appeared in the living room, her eyes swollen from crying. What do you want? She asked bluntly. To talk. Just talk. Jennifer realized she should give them privacy and left the room, though she stayed in the kitchen where she could hear everything. Look, Dakota, I know you were trying to be kind the other day, but you don't have to sacrifice yourself for me. My father has no right to decide my life. Who said it would be a sacrifice? Samantha stared at him, searching for signs of deceit or mockery, but found none. You don't even know me. I know you have a kind heart. I saw how you tried to protect me when your father came into the yard. I know you've suffered a long time trying to please people who will never be satisfied. How could you know that? Because I've been through the same struggles. Maybe not with weight, but with other things. When you grow up being judged for something you can't control, you develop a special kind of compassion for others. Samantha sat on the couch, suddenly exhausted. You know this is crazy, right? An arranged marriage in the 21st century? Yeah, but it could also be the start of something good. It doesn't have to be about love at first. It can be about partnership, about two people helping each other grow. And if it doesn't work out, then we go our separate ways. Simple as that. The simplicity of Dakota's answer surprised her. She was used to the drama and complications her father created for everything. Why did you really agree? She pressed. Dakota was silent for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Because when I saw you crying in that backyard, I saw myself a few years ago. And because, he hesitated, because I thought you were beautiful. Samantha let out a bitter laugh. Beautiful? Dakota, I'm fat, really fat. My own father is ashamed of me. Your father's an idiot. The statement was so blunt it left her speechless. Sorry to speak about your father like that, but it's true. Any man who can't see his own daughter's worth is an idiot. For the first time in days, Samantha felt like smiling. Are you really serious about this marriage? Completely serious. And your family? Will they accept a woman like me? Dakota's expression darkened slightly. That might be a challenge, but we'll face it together if you want. Samantha looked down at her hands, trying to process everything. She'd spent her whole life waiting for someone to love her as she was, and now a stranger was offering exactly that. Can I get to know you better before deciding? She asked timidly. Of course. How much time do you need? A few weeks? Perfect. In the weeks that followed, Dakota visited Samantha regularly. He told her about his life on the reservation, about the craft work he'd learned from his grandmother, about the challenges of keeping traditions alive in an increasingly modernized world. Samantha, in turn, shared her abandoned dreams, how she'd always wanted to study nutrition, but gave up when she realized the irony of it, how she felt invisible most of the time. Why nutrition? Dakota asked one afternoon as they sat on the back porch. I've always been interested in how food affects the body and mind. And also, she hesitated. I thought if I understood food better, maybe I could accept myself better. Have you ever tried accepting yourself without needing to change? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? What if you were already perfect exactly as you are? Dakota, look at me, I'm far from perfect. I am looking, and I see a smart, kind woman strong enough to survive years of unfair criticism. If that's not perfection, I don't know what is. Samantha felt tears forming, but this time they weren't from sadness. Are you sure you're not doing this out of pity? I'm sure. Honestly, I think you're being generous with me. You could choose any man, and you're considering someone who lives on a reservation and makes a living selling crafts. Any man? Samantha laughed. You clearly haven't heard the talks my father has about my lack of suitors. Your father only sees what society taught him to see. I see you. Their conversation was interrupted by Richard's arrival from work, his expression even grumpier than usual. Still here talking? He grumbled. Have you decided anything, or are you just going to drag this out forever? Richard! Jennifer appeared behind him. Leave them alone! Dad, I can make my own decisions, Samantha said, finding a courage she didn't know she had. Your decisions? Richard let out a sarcastic laugh. Your decisions over the past 24 years have been to grow fatter and lazier. At least now someone is offering a solution. Dakota rose slowly. There was a shift in his posture that silenced everyone. Mr. Anderson, he said in a low but authoritative voice, with all due respect, if we're going to be family, I need to make something clear. I won't tolerate anyone speaking about Samantha like that in my presence, not even her father. Richard turned red with anger. How dare you give me orders in my own home? I'm not giving orders, I'm setting boundaries. If Samantha agrees to marry me, she'll be my wife, and I'll protect her from anyone who tries to hurt her, including her family. The tension in the air was palpable. Jennifer held her breath, Samantha stood open-mouthed, and Richard looked ready to explode. But then something unexpected happened. Richard backed down. Maybe it was Dakota's confident stance, or perhaps the realization that he'd met someone who would truly relieve him of responsibility for Samantha. Whatever the reason, he muttered something about having work to do and went inside. Wow, whispered Samantha. No one's ever stood up to my dad like that before. Then it's about time someone did, Dakota replied. That night, Samantha made her decision. I accept, she said the next morning when Dakota arrived for his daily visit. Are you sure? I am, but on one condition. What? I want to meet your family and your reservation before the wedding. If they completely reject me, maybe we should reconsider. Fair enough. We can go next weekend. The trip to the reservation was an eye-opener for Samantha. Nestled in a preserved area of the Pacific Northwest forest between San Diego and Sedona, the Lakota community was small but well-organized. The huts were simple yet cozy, and there was a sense of peace she'd never experienced before. But the reception she received was cold. This is Samantha. Dakota introduced her to his mother, Willow, a woman in her 50s with long silver hair and eyes that seemed to see right through people. Willow greeted her politely, but Samantha could feel the silent judgment. It wasn't just about her weight, though that was clearly a factor. It was about her being a white woman from the city. My son has told me about you, Willow said in English, but with a heavy accent. It's unexpected. For me too, Samantha admitted. During lunch with other community members, Samantha felt like an animal on display. People were polite. but she could hear whispers in Lakota she couldn't understand. "What are they saying?" she asked Dakota when they stepped away from the group. "They're worried," he admitted. "They think you won't adapt to life here, and they're afraid I'll end up leaving the reservation to live in the city. And you? Are you afraid of that?" "No. I chose to live here. I wasn't forced to, and I'd choose it again, with you." But as the days passed, Samantha began to grasp the depth of the challenges they'd face. Life on the reservation was completely different from anything she knew. The physical work was constant, comforts were minimal, and she often felt useless. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On the third night of her visit, Samantha overheard Willow talking with other women from the reservation. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was clearly disapproving. "Are they talking about me?" she asked Dakota. He hesitated before answering. "They're concerned. They think you're too fragile for life here." "Fragile?" Samantha let out a bitter laugh. "If they knew what I've been through in my life, they wouldn't call me fragile." "I know, but to them, surviving criticism in the city is different from surviving in the forest. And you, do you think I'm fragile?" Dakota looked at her for a long moment. "I think you're stronger than you realize, but I also think you're very afraid to discover that." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Samantha and Dakota stepped out of the hut to see what was happening and found Richard Anderson standing in the center of the reservation, clearly out of place in his suit and dress shoes. "Dad!" Samantha couldn't believe her eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I came to get you. This has gone far enough." "How did you find us?" "I hired a detective. It wasn't hard." Richard's presence caused a stir in the reservation. Willow and the other elders approached, clearly uncomfortable with the intrusion. "Samantha, come home with me now," Richard ordered. "This wedding nonsense is over." "It's not nonsense," Samantha said, surprised by her own firmness. "Of course it is. Look where you are. This is no place for a civilized person." The comment sparked angry murmurs among the reservation's inhabitants. Dakota stepped forward. "Mr. Anderson, you're not welcome here with that attitude." "And who's going to stop me, you?" Richard laughed scornfully. "I came for my daughter, and I'm taking her, whether she likes it or not." "No, you're not," said a steady voice. Everyone turned to see Samantha positioning herself between Richard and Dakota. "Samantha, stop this ridiculous rebellion and come with me. I'm not a child anymore, Dad, and I'm not going anywhere." "Have you lost your mind? You'd rather live in this—" He gestured disdainfully at the huts. "Poverty than come home. I'd rather live with people who respect me than with someone who's ashamed of me." Richard turned red. "I'm not ashamed of you." "Yes, you are. I heard you talking at your birthday party. I heard every word." The silence that followed was awkward. Richard realized he'd lost any moral authority he might have had. "Samantha, You don't need to explain anything, Dad. You just need to leave and let me be. Your mother is worried. Then tell her I'm fine. Better than I've been in a long time." Richard looked around, realizing everyone in the reservation was watching his humiliation. With no more arguments, he turned and left, muttering vague threats about handling this legally. After he was gone, Willow approached Samantha. "You stood up to your father," she said, with slightly more respect than before. "I did." "Why?" Samantha thought for a moment. "Because I'm tired of letting people decide who I am without really knowing me." Willow nodded slowly. "Maybe you're not as fragile as we thought." That night, the atmosphere in the reservation was different. People still watched Samantha with curiosity, but there was less hostility and more genuine interest. "What changed?" she asked Dakota. "You proved you're not just some city woman running from her problems. You faced your biggest problem head-on." "My father isn't my biggest problem," Samantha said thoughtfully. No. My biggest problem is myself, the things I believe about me." Dakota smiled. "That's a battle only you can fight, but you don't have to fight it alone." In the days that followed, Samantha began taking a more active part in reservation life. Willow taught her about medicinal plants, discovering she had a natural talent for understanding the properties of local vegetation. You have good hands for this, Willow remarked, as Samantha prepared a salve for muscle pain, and good intuition. I've always been interested in how plants can heal, Samantha admitted. It's an ancient gift. My grandmother used to say that some people are born with the ability to hear what the plants are trying to teach us. As the weeks passed, Samantha began to feel more at home in the reservation than she ever had in her parents' house. But there were still challenges. The biggest one came during an important community ceremony. Samantha was still learning the customs and, nervous about being watched by everyone, couldn't eat anything all day. In the middle of the ceremony, she fainted. When she woke up, she was in Willow's hut, surrounded by several women from the reservation, all worried. "When was the last time you ate?" Willow asked sternly. "I don't remember," Samantha admitted. "Why?" Samantha began to cry. "Because everyone was watching, and I thought if I didn't eat, maybe you'd accept me better." Willow sighed deeply. "Silly child. Do you think not eating will make you smaller? Make you less yourself?" "I just wanted to fit in." "Then you'll never fit in. Because to truly fit in, you first need to accept who you are." Willow prepared a tea with herbs Samantha didn't recognize and made her drink it. "My son told me about your struggles with food, about how you always try to be less than you are. They're not struggles, it's just complicated. Yes, they are, and it's a struggle that can kill you if left untreated." Willow's bluntness shocked her. "I won't starve to death. Not from hunger, but from self-hatred. I've seen people die from that, slowly, piece by piece, until nothing's left." Samantha stayed silent, absorbing her mother-in-law's words. "How do I change? How do I stop hating myself?" "Start by treating yourself the way you'd treat someone you love." "I don't know if I know how to do that." "Then learn, I'll teach you." In the months that followed, Willow worked with Samantha not just on medicinal plants, but on self-acceptance. It was a painful, slow process, full of setbacks and moments of frustration. But there was progress. Samantha began to eat regularly, took a more active role in reservation life, and started looking at her reflection without immediately searching for flaws. The wedding was set for late autumn, in a ceremony blending Lakota traditions with some concessions for Samantha's family. Jennifer had been invited and agreed to come, but Richard Anderson refused outright to attend. "He's still furious," Jennifer said during one of her visits to the reservation. "But I think deep down, he's hurt, because you don't need him anymore." "I never needed him the way he wanted," Samantha replied. "I needed a father who loved me unconditionally. He wanted a daughter who was a trophy." "He loves you, Samantha. He just doesn't know how to show it." "Love isn't about wanting to change someone. It's about accepting who they are." Jennifer looked at her daughter and saw a profound change. Samantha was more confident, more at peace. She'd gained some weight since stopping restrictive diets, but paradoxically, she looked healthier and more beautiful than ever. "Are you happy here?" Jennifer asked. "I am. For the first time in my life, I'm truly happy." "And Dakota, do you love each other?" Samantha smiled. "We're learning. It started as a partnership, but it's becoming something deeper. He's a good man." "He is, and he makes me feel like I'm a good woman." The conversation between mother and daughter was interrupted by Dakota's arrival. He'd just returned from a trip to town to sell crafts. "Samantha, we need to talk," he said, his expression serious in a way she didn't recognize. "What happened?" "Your father showed up at the shop where I sell my pieces, made a scene, yelling that I kidnapped you and that he'd call the authorities." Samantha's stomach dropped. "What else did he say?" "That he found a rich man interested in marrying you, someone who can give you the life you deserve." "What man?" "He didn't say the name. But I was very confident you'd change your mind once you heard the details." Jennifer turned pale. "Samantha, your father has been talking about a businessman he recently met, someone who doesn't care about your appearance, as long as you're an obedient wife." "An obedient wife," repeated Samantha, feeling anger rise within her. "As if I were some domesticated animal." "He's desperate," Jennifer tried to explain. "The debts are getting worse, and he thinks a profitable marriage could solve the family's financial problems." "What debts?" asked Samantha, surprised. Jennifer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Your father made some bad investments and he owes money to dangerous people. Loan sharks? Something like that. Samantha looked at Dakota, who was listening silently. He's trying to sell me off to pay his debts. I think so, admitted Jennifer, tears in her eyes. The revelation changed everything. Samantha realized the original arranged marriage hadn't just been about her lack of romantic prospects. It had been about money from the start. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked her mother. Because I didn't want you to feel guilty, and because I hoped your father would find another solution. But he didn't, and now he wants to undo my marriage to make another deal. Dakota gently touched Samantha's arm. What do you want to do? I want to marry you exactly as we planned, she said with a determination that surprised everyone, and I want my father to understand I'm not some commodity. But the trouble was just beginning. The following week, Richard showed up at the reservation again, this time accompanied by a well-dressed man Samantha didn't recognize. Samantha, Richard called as soon as he saw her. Come here. I want to introduce you to someone. She reluctantly approached, with Dakota by her side. This is my daughter Samantha, Richard told the stranger. Samantha, this is Charles Edward Blackwell. He's interested in getting to know you better. Charles Edward was a man around 40, with perfectly combed hair and expensive clothes. He looked Samantha up and down as if appraising livestock. Pleasure to meet you, he said, extending his hand. The pleasure isn't mutual, Samantha replied, ignoring his hand. Richard turned red with embarrassment. Samantha, be polite. I am being polite. I could have been rude. Charles Edward laughed, as if her attitude amused him. I like women with personality, he said. Makes things more interesting. Mr. Blackwell, Dakota interjected, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Samantha and I are getting married next month. Ah, yes? I've heard about this situation. Charles Edward looked at Dakota with disdain. But I'm sure we can come to an agreement. What kind of agreement? Asked Samantha, though she already knew she wouldn't like the answer. Well, your father told me about the family's financial troubles. I can solve all those problems in exchange for your hand in marriage. And why would you do that for a stranger? Charles Edward smiled, but there was something unpleasant about it. Because I need a wife and you meet my requirements. What requirements? A woman who won't give me trouble, who'll be grateful for the opportunity, who knows her place. Samantha felt sick. My place? As the wife of a successful man, you'd have everything a woman could want. A big house, maids, financial security. In exchange for what? For being a good wife, obedient, discreet, focused on the home. And if I don't want to be obedient? Charles Edward's smile turned colder. I'm sure we'd come to an understanding. The implicit threat in his words made Dakota step forward. I think you'd better leave. Now. Excuse me, said Charles Edward, clearly irritated. I'm having a private conversation with my future wife. She is not your future wife, Dakota replied. That could change quickly, especially if certain debts are collected in a more direct way. The threat was now explicit. Richard pulled his daughter by the arm. Samantha, be reasonable. Think of your family. I am thinking. I'm thinking you're willing to hand me over to a man who clearly doesn't see me as a person, just to solve problems you created yourself. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Samantha freed herself from her father and stood beside Dakota. Gentlemen, you may leave. I have nothing more to discuss with you. Charles Edward lost his civilized composure. You'll regret this decision, he said coldly, and so will your family. After they left, the entire reservation was in an uproar. Willow called a meeting of the elders to discuss the situation. These men are dangerous, she told Samantha and Dakota. Men like that don't take no easily. What can we do? Asked Samantha. Speed up the wedding, suggested one of the elders. If you're legally married, it'll be harder for them to interfere. But what if they try to force things another way? Dakota questioned. Then we'll fight, Willow answered simply. This community protects its own. The wedding ceremony took place a week later, in an atmosphere of celebration but also tension. Jennifer was there, visibly torn between her daughter's happiness and fear of what Richard might do. The Lakota ritual was beautiful and meaningful. Samantha and Dakota exchanged vows in English and Lakota, sealed their union with the elders' blessing, and shared traditional foods symbolizing prosperity and fertility. But even amid the celebration, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. She was right. 3 days after the wedding, Jennifer arrived at the reservation in a panic. "Samantha, thank God you're safe." "Mom, what happened?" "Your father. He's spreading lies about you, telling everyone you're being held here against your will, that you were kidnapped." "That's ridiculous." "I know, but he's convinced some people. There's a group of men planning to come here to rescue you." Dakota grew serious. "When?" "I don't know, but soon. Charles Edward hired some thugs. They're claiming you were forced into marriage and need saving." The situation was turning dangerous. Willow gathered the elders again to discuss protective measures. "They can't invade our land," she said. "We have protected rights." "But if they bring authorities saying they're investigating a kidnapping," one elder began. "Then Samantha must prove she's here willingly," concluded another. "How?" asked Samantha. "By speaking publicly. To journalists, to officials, to anyone who'll listen." The idea of exposing herself terrified Samantha, but she knew she had no choice. "I'll do it." "It won't be easy," Willow warned. "They'll try to humiliate you, question your decisions, make you seem crazy or coerced. Then I'll prove I'm not." Dakota took her hand. "You don't have to do this alone." "Yes, I do. This is my fight." In the days that followed, Samantha prepared for what she knew would be the hardest battle of her life. With Willow and others from the community, she planned how to tell her story so people would understand the truth. The confrontation came sooner than expected. One morning, 3 vans arrived at the edge of the reservation. From one of them emerged Richard, Charles Edward, and 2 men who were clearly security guards. From the others came journalists with cameras. "Samantha," shouted Richard, "come here now. These people want to hear that you're okay." Samantha took a deep breath and stepped out of the hut where she lived with Dakota. She had prepared for this moment, choosing clothes that blended elements of Lakota culture with modern pieces, symbolizing her new identity. "I'm fine, Dad," she said, approaching the group. "Better than I've ever been." "Miss Anderson," began one of the journalists, "your father claims you were coerced into marriage and are being held here against your will. Is that true?" "It's a lie," Samantha replied clearly. "I chose to marry Dakota, and I chose to live here." "But the circumstances of the marriage were unusual," insisted another journalist. "They were. My father offered my hand in marriage to settle personal debts. Dakota accepted but refused the money. We got to know each other better in the following weeks and decided to marry for love, not obligation." "This is ridiculous," Richard exploded. "She's being manipulated." "By whom?" Samantha asked calmly. "By people who taught me to love myself, who respect me, who've never made me feel ashamed of who I am." One of the journalists, a middle-aged woman, stepped forward. Mrs. Anderson Rivers," she said, noticing the ring on Samantha's finger. "May I ask why you chose this life? It's very different from how you were raised." "That's exactly why I chose it," Samantha replied. "I was raised believing my worth depended on others' approval, especially men's. Here, I learned my worth is intrinsic." "But what about the future?" the journalist pressed. "Don't you feel you're wasting opportunities?" "What opportunities, being sold to a man who sees me as property?" Samantha looked directly at Charles Edward. "Or building a life with someone who loves me for who I am?" Charles Edward finally spoke. "Samantha, be realistic. What future do you have here, living in poverty, no education for your children, no prospects?" "Prospects of what? Being unhappy in a big house, raising children who learn love can be bought with money? You're being naive. I was naive before when I believed I had to change to be loved." One of the journalists, a younger woman who clearly identified with Samantha's story, asked a different question. What would you say to people who claim you're giving up an easier life? I'd say an easy life isn't a happy one, and I'd rather face hardships with someone who loves me than have ease with someone who tolerates me. The interview continued for another hour. Samantha answered every question with honesty and clarity that surprised even herself. She spoke about self-worth, social pressures, and the difference between being cared for and being controlled. When the journalists finally left, Richard made one last attempt. Samantha, please come home with me. We can talk, find a solution to all this. The solution is for you to accept my choices, Dad. And if I can't, then you'll have to live with it, because I won't spend my life trying to please someone who'll never be satisfied. Richard looked at his daughter for a long moment. Samantha saw tears in his eyes, but also knew he wasn't ready to accept the truth. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, he said finally. Maybe, but at least it's my mistake to make. After the group left, the reservation returned to normal, but Samantha knew the fallout was just beginning. She was right. In the following days, the story spread across social media and the news. Opinions were divided. Some supported her choice, others harshly criticized it. But there was an unexpected response. Women from all over the country began reaching out, sharing their own stories of struggling against impossible standards and toxic relationships. You've become a symbol, Jennifer said during one of her visits. Support groups are forming in several cities inspired by your story. That's terrifying, admitted Samantha. Why? Because I didn't want to be a symbol. I just wanted to be happy. Maybe one thing leads to the other, suggested Dakota. He was right. In the following months, Samantha began receiving invitations to speak at events about self-esteem and body acceptance. Initially reluctant, she ended up accepting a few, always accompanied by Dakota. The talks became a way for her to process her own journey while helping others. She spoke about the dangers of unrealistic beauty standards, the importance of healthy relationships, and finding self-worth regardless of others' opinions. But the biggest test was yet to come. A year after the wedding, Samantha discovered she was pregnant. The news brought joy, but also fear. She worried about raising a child in a society that still judged by appearances, how she would protect the child from the same traumas she had faced. What if our child inherits my problems? She asked Dakota one sleepless night. What problems? My weight, my tendency to undervalue myself, my... Samantha, he gently interrupted. Our child will inherit your strength, your intelligence, your compassion, and they'll grow up in a family that loves them unconditionally. But what if other people will always have opinions? Our job is to teach our child to value the right ones and ignore the wrong ones. The pregnancy brought other challenges too. Samantha had to navigate the changes in her body while trying to maintain the self-acceptance she had fought for. Some days, she felt insecure. Others, she marveled at what her body was capable of. Willow was a constant source of support, teaching her about traditional prenatal care and preparing her mentally for motherhood. Having children changes a woman, she said one afternoon as they prepared teas for morning sickness. But not in the way people think. How so? People think you just become a mother, that you lose your identity. But in truth, you discover who you really are. Because when you love someone more than yourself, you find strengths you never knew you had. What if I can't be a good mother? Impossible. A good mother isn't a perfect mother, she's a mother who loves truly. During the pregnancy, there was an unexpected attempt at reconciliation. Richard showed up at the reservation alone, without Charles Edward or lawyers. I came to ask to meet my grandchild, he told Samantha. Granddaughter, she corrected. It's a girl. Granddaughter then, may I? Samantha looked at her father. He seemed smaller, more fragile. There was a vulnerability in his eyes she had never seen before. That depends, she replied. On what? On you accepting that this is my family now. That Dakota is my husband and deserves respect. That my daughter will grow up knowing both cultures but living here. Richard hesitated. And if I can't fully accept that? Then you'll meet your granddaughter during supervised visits until you prove you've changed. That's very harsh, Samantha. It's realistic. You spent years hurting me with your words and actions. I won't let you do the same to my daughter. Richard nodded slowly. Can I try to change? You can, but it has to be real change, not just pretending to get access to the baby. Emily's birth brought unexpected changes for the whole family. The girl was born healthy, with Dakota's rare green eyes and Samantha's smile. Richard, present at the hospital during the birth, a concession Samantha made for Jennifer, cried when he held his granddaughter for the first time. She's perfect, he murmured. She is, Samantha agreed. And she always will be, no matter who she grows up to be. The comment was a clear message, and Richard understood. In the following months, something extraordinary happened. Richard truly began to change. His visits to the reservation became more frequent and less tense. He learned a few words in Lakota to communicate with Emily when she started speaking. He began treating Dakota with genuine respect. What changed in him? Samantha asked Jennifer during one of their visits. I think seeing Emily made him realize he could lose you forever if he didn't change, and he's afraid of dying alone. He won't die alone. He has you. But you're his daughter. It's different. Samantha understood. Despite everything, Richard loved her in his own flawed way, and now he was trying to learn a better one. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect. Richard still had moments when his prejudices surfaced, but now he corrected himself when Samantha or Dakota pointed them out. It was slow but real progress. Emily grew up surrounded by love and acceptance. By age 2, she was fluent in English and Lakota, equally comfortable playing in the reservation or at her maternal grandparents' house, and she displayed a strong personality that reminded everyone of her mother. Samantha, in turn, had found her purpose. Beyond being a mother and wife, she developed a consulting business in medicinal plants, creating natural products that sold both on the reservation and in the city. She was a bridge between the two worlds that were now part of her life. "Are you happy?" Jennifer asked one afternoon when all 3 generations of women in the family were gathered on the porch of the reservation house. "Very," Samantha replied, watching Emily play on the ground. "More than I ever thought possible." "No regrets?" "None." "And if you could go back and change something?" Samantha thought for a moment. "Maybe how it all began. I wish my marriage had started from love from the very beginning, not a cruel arrangement." "But it did start from love," Jennifer observed. "Your own love first, then love for another." "That's true. And maybe it was better that way. You built a relationship based on choice, not blind passion." Samantha looked at Dakota, who was across the yard teaching Emily how to make a kite. He felt her gaze and smiled, waving. "Yes," she said to her mother, "it was better this way." Years passed. Emily grew into a confident teenager who moved effortlessly between cultures and defied any attempt to fit her into predefined molds. She inherited her mother's emotional intelligence and her father's serenity, but had a unique, strong personality of her own. Richard, surprisingly, became a devoted and protective grandfather. There were moments when Samantha watched him play with Emily and barely recognized the man who had once publicly humiliated her. "People can change," she remarked to Dakota on one such occasion. "Some people," he corrected, "when they truly want to and have enough motivation." What was my father's motivation? Fear of losing you, and love for Emily. Do you think he really loves me? He always has. He just didn't know how to show it in a healthy way. Samantha had learned to forgive her father, not for his sake, but for her own. Carrying anger was a burden she no longer wanted to bear. Her marriage to Dakota had evolved from a practical partnership into a deep, mature love. They faced challenges, cultural differences, outside pressures, financial struggles at times, but always with mutual respect and honest communication. "You saved my life," she told him one night as they celebrated their 10th anniversary. "You saved your own life," he replied. "I just offered a safe place for you to do it." "It was more than that. You showed me I deserved love. You always did. You just needed to believe it. The conversation was interrupted by Emily, now 15, arriving home from school. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk," she announced, with the seriousness she sometimes showed, which reminded Samantha so much of herself. "What is it?" Samantha asked, immediately concerned. "I'm thinking of applying for a student exchange program in New Zealand." Samantha felt her heart race. The thought of Emily so far away terrified her, but it also filled her with pride. Her daughter had the confidence to dream big, something she herself had only learned as an adult. "That's an incredible opportunity," Dakota said calmly. "When would you need to decide?" "Next month. But I wanted your blessing before applying." Samantha looked at her husband and saw the same mix of fear and pride in his eyes that she felt. "You have our blessing," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice, "and our support to make it happen." Emily smiled and hugged her parents. "Thank you for teaching me to dream big." That night, after Emily went to bed, Samantha and Dakota talked about how raising brave children meant being willing to let them fly, even when it hurt. "She'll come back," Dakota said. "How do you know?" "Because we planted strong roots in her. No matter where she goes, she'll always know where home is." Samantha nestled into her husband's arms, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. It began with humiliation and pain, moved through uncertainty and fear, and arrived at love and fulfillment. "If someone had told me this story 10 years ago, I never would have believed it," she murmured. "Which part?" "All of it. That I'd be happy, that I'd have a family who loves me, that I'd raise a confident daughter, that even my father would change." Life has those kinds of surprises. It does. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us make way for the best. How so? If my father hadn't humiliated me that birthday, I never would have run to the backyard. I never would have met you. Our whole story started with the worst night of my life up to that point. Dakota kissed the top of her head. Maybe it was fate. I don't believe in fate. I believe in choices, and in people's ability to turn pain into growth. And you did. We did. Together. They fell silent for a while, listening to the nighttime sounds of the reservation, crickets, wind in the trees, the distant river. "Dakota." "Hmm?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing in me what I couldn't see in myself." "Samantha?" "Hmm?" "Thank you too." "For what?" "For choosing me. Every day, you choose me all over again. That's the greatest gift anyone can give." The next morning, Samantha woke to Emily making pancakes in the kitchen, a recipe blending traditional Lakota ingredients with techniques she'd learned online. "Good morning, Mom," Emily said. "I made breakfast for the whole family." "The whole family?" "Grandpa Richard and Grandma Jennifer are on their way, remember? It's visiting Sunday." Samantha had forgotten. Sunday visits had become a tradition in recent years, a time when both families gathered to share meals and stories. When Richard and Jennifer arrived, Richard carried a small gift for Emily, a book about native cultures of New Zealand. "For you to study before your exchange," he explained. Samantha watched the interaction between grandfather and granddaughter, still sometimes amazed by Richard's transformation. He wasn't perfect, he still had his difficult moments, but he'd become a present and loving grandfather. Over lunch, Emily shared her exchange plans. Richard asked thoughtful questions and offered practical support. Jennifer worried about the safety details. Dakota shared stories about the importance of learning about other cultures. They were a family. Not traditional, not perfect, but real and functional. "Remember when you said you'd never forgive me?" Richard asked Samantha when the two older women took Emily to show her something in the garden. "I remember." "And now?" "Now, I know forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing not to let the past control the future." "I'm sorry, Samantha, for the things I said, for how I treated you. If I could go back." "You can't. And maybe that's for the best. If things had been different, I might never have found my strength. Your daughter is lucky to have you as her mother, and lucky to have you as her grandfather. The man you've become, not who you were. Richard nodded, moved. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for earning it. Later, when everyone had left and Emily was doing her homework, Samantha and Dakota walked through the reservation as they did every evening. What are you thinking about? He asked, noticing she was quieter than usual. About how strange life is. 15 years ago, I was a 24-year-old woman who thought I'd never be happy, that I'd never find real love, that I'd always be a burden to everyone around me. And now I have a husband who loves me, an amazing daughter, a fulfilling job, a family that finally works. I've even made peace with my own body. You've always deserved all of this. Maybe, but I needed to learn to believe I deserved it, and that was the most important gift you gave me. Not your love, but the belief that I was worthy of being loved. They stopped on a small hill overlooking the reservation. The lights from the huts twinkled like earthly stars, and the sound of the river created the perfect soundtrack for the moment. Dakota. Yes? If you could give one piece of advice to the woman I was 15 years ago, what would you say? He thought for a moment. I'd say the most important opinion about you is your own, that you don't have to make yourself smaller to make others feel bigger, and that real love doesn't ask you to change but encourages you to become the best version of yourself. And if I could talk to that 24-year-old Samantha, I'd tell her to be patient, that life has better plans for her than she can imagine, that the pain is worth it to reach the joy. They watched the stars in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the journey that had brought them there. Dakota, I love you. I love you too. Simple words, but heavy with years of choices, sacrifices, mutual growth, and daily commitment. It wasn't the dramatic love from movies, but something deeper and more sustainable. As they walked back home, Samantha thought about all the women who had reached out to her over the years, sharing their own stories of struggle and transformation. She thought of Emily, growing up with a self-esteem she herself had only developed as an adult. She thought of Richard, proving that people can change when they truly want to, but mostly she thought of herself, the journey of a woman who once believed she was unworthy of love and now knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The house was quiet when they arrived. Emily had finished her homework and was reading in her room. Samantha went to say goodnight and found her daughter flipping through the book Richard had given her. Is it interesting? Samantha asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Very. Did you know the Maori have traditions really similar to the Lakota, especially about the connection to nature and respect for elders? I didn't. Are you excited about the exchange program? I am, but also a little scared. Of what? Of missing home, of not being able to adjust, of finding out I'm not as strong as I think I am. Samantha smiled, recognizing her own fears from years ago. Emily, can I tell you a secret? Of course. When I married your father, I had the same fears. I thought I wouldn't be able to adapt to life on the reservation, that I'd find out I wasn't strong enough for such a big change. And how did you overcome it? I learned that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. And I learned that home isn't a place. It's the people who love us and who we carry in our hearts. Emily hugged her mother. Thank you, Mum, for teaching me how to be brave. Thank you for reminding me every day how worth it is to be brave. When Samantha left her daughter's room, she found Dakota on the porch, working on a new piece of craftsmanship by the lantern light. What are you making? She asked, sitting beside him. A bracelet for Emily to take on her trip, with symbols of protection and reminders of home. Samantha watched her husband's skilled hands working the leather and beads. After all these years, she was still amazed by his patience and dedication. You're a wonderful father, she said. I learned from a wonderful mother. We learned together. That's true. They worked in comfortable silence, Samantha holding the leather, while Dakota tied the intricate knots. It was a simple domestic scene, but full of meaning. Two people who had chosen to build a life together, making small gestures of love and care every day. Samantha? Yes? Thank you. For what? For changing my life too. Before you, I had a good life, but a small one. You taught me that we can be happy and still dream big. How so? The work we've done together, the talks you give, the bridge we've built between the reservation and the city, none of that would exist if you hadn't come into my life. It would exist in a different way, but it wouldn't be the same. You brought a perspective I didn't have, a courage that inspired me to try new things. Samantha thought about it. It was true her life had changed drastically, but it was also true she had changed the lives of those around her. I think we make a good team, she said finally. The best. They finished the bracelet as the clock neared midnight. It was a beautiful piece, blending traditional Lakota techniques with more modern elements, like so many things in their lives. It's done, Dakota announced, admiring his work. Emily will love it. She will, and she'll think of us every time she looks at it. Samantha took the bracelet and examined it in the lantern light. Every detail had been crafted with care, every symbol chosen with meaning. It was a work of art, but also a declaration of love. Dakota! If someone asked me what the most important moment of my life was, do you know what I'd say? What? It wouldn't be Emily's birth, or our wedding, or even that first night when you gave me the scarf in the yard. No? Then what would it be? The moment I looked in the mirror and saw myself the way you see me, when I finally understood that I was always enough, I just didn't know it. And when was that? It wasn't one specific moment, it was a process. But it happened because of you. Because you loved me so consistently until I learned to love myself too. Dakota pulled her closer, and they held each other on the porch, watching the stars and listening to the nighttime sounds of the reservation. Samantha, yes? I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just had the privilege of watching. Maybe, but I couldn't have done it alone. Of course you could. You're stronger than you think. Now I am, but I wasn't before you. Yes, you were. The strength was always there. You just needed someone to believe in her for you to start believing too. They entered the house a few minutes later, checked if Emily was sleeping soundly, and got ready for bed themselves. It was a simple, comforting routine they had developed over the years. In bed, Samantha nestled into Dakota's arms as she did every night. There was something deeply satisfying about the predictability of that ritual, not out of boredom, but for the emotional security it brought. "Good night," she murmured. "Good night, my love." Within minutes, Dakota was asleep, but Samantha stayed awake a little longer, reflecting on everything. She thought about how life could be unpredictably generous at times, how the worst moments could lead to the best, how true love didn't happen despite flaws but embraced them as part of the whole person. She thought of Emily, growing up with a confidence she herself had only found in her 30s. She thought of Richard, who had overcome years of social conditioning to become a present grandfather. She thought of Jennifer, who had finally found peace within her family, but mostly she thought of herself, the woman she had been and the woman she had become. They weren't entirely different people, but the same person who had learned to value herself. When she finally fell asleep, it was with a smile on her face and a deep sense of gratitude for the winding path that had led her exactly where she was meant to be. The next morning, she woke to the sound of Emily and Dakota talking in the kitchen about preparations for the exchange program. It was a morning like many others, yet somehow special. "Good morning, family," she said as she walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, Mom. Dad was just telling me about when you first arrived here." "Oh, really? What did he say?" "That you were so nervous you could barely speak Lakota, but you tried anyway." "That's true, I butchered the language. But you didn't give up," Emily pointed out. "No, because I learned that it's worth putting in the effort for the things that matter." Emily smiled and hugged her mother. "Thank you for not giving up. On yourself, on Dad, on us. Thank you for giving me even more reasons to never give up." Dakota watched the scene with the quiet smile Samantha had grown to love so much. It wasn't the smile of someone pretending to be happy, but of someone who had found genuine peace. "What are you thinking about?" she asked him. "How lucky we are." "How so?" "So many people spend their whole lives searching for what we've found. Some never do." "And what have we found?" A home. Not just a place to live, but people we completely belong with. Samantha looked around the simple kitchen, saw Emily sipping herbal tea that Willow had taught her to make, watched Dakota organizing the crafting tools he'd used during the day, smelled the homemade bread Jennifer had taught her to bake. It was an ordinary life, without grand luxuries or extraordinary adventures, but it was exactly the life she had dreamed of without even knowing she was dreaming. Dakota, yes? If you could go back and change our story, would you change anything? He thought for a long moment. Maybe I'd change the pain you had to go through to get here. But I wouldn't change the outcome. Neither would I, because the pain was part of the growth, and now I can help others going through the same. That's true. How many women have written to you saying your story inspired them? So many. But you know what makes me happiest about those letters? What? It's not when they say they want a life like mine. It's when they say my story inspired them to figure out what kind of life they want for themselves. Emily, who had been listening quietly, made an observation that surprised her parents with its maturity. I think that's what it really means to be a grown-up. It's not about having all the answers. It's about helping others find their own. Samantha looked at her daughter with pride and a touch of awe. Emily was only 15, but she showed an emotional wisdom many adults never developed. Where did you learn that? She asked. From you, watching how you treat people, how you listen without judging, how you support without trying to control. You'll do great in New Zealand, said Dakota. I will, but I'll also miss you all so much. Missing someone is the price we pay for love, Samantha observed, but it's also proof that love is real. The rest of the morning passed quickly, with everyone tending to their responsibilities. Samantha worked on her latest recipe for joint pain ointment, which had become popular among the elderly in the area. Dakota prepared several pieces for a craft fair in town. Emily studied for a history test she had on Monday. It was a familiar, ordinary routine, but one full of purpose and contentment. At lunch, they had an unexpected visitor. Jennifer arrived alone with a mysterious expression on her face. Mom, what happened? Asked Samantha, immediately concerned. Nothing happened, quite the opposite. I have news to share. What news? Jennifer took a deep breath. Your father proposed to me. Again. The silence that followed was pure surprise. What do you mean, again? Emily asked. Well, we've been married for over 25 years, but he said he wants to renew our vows, to celebrate the man he's become, and publicly ask forgiveness for the things he's done. Samantha was speechless. The idea of Richard making a public declaration of change was almost inconceivable. And you? Do you want to do it? She finally asked. I do, because I've fallen in love with the man he's become. The Richard of today is the man I always dreamed he could be. When would the ceremony be? In 3 months, and we'd like it to be here on the reservation, if Dakota and the community agree. Dakota smiled. It would be an honor to have you. Thank you. Richard was nervous to ask. He's still ashamed of how he treated you all at first. People who truly regret their mistakes and make amends deserve a second chance, said Samantha. He'll be so happy to hear that. The conversation continued for another hour, with Jennifer sharing details about the ceremony plans. Richard wanted something simple but meaningful, a declaration of love, not just for Jennifer, but also an apology to the whole family. He's changed so much, Samantha, Jennifer said before leaving. Sometimes I can hardly believe it myself. Yesterday he told me the biggest lesson he's learned is that trying to control the people we love is the fastest way to lose them. That's an important lesson. It is. And he learned it by watching the two of you. How you respect each other's choices, how you support without smothering. After Jennifer left, the family sat with the news. Grandpa really has changed, Emily observed. He has, Samantha agreed, but I'm still a little shocked about the vow renewal. Why? Asked Dakota. Because it means he finally understands marriage isn't about possession. It's about partnership. Do you think it's too late for him to learn that? No, it's never too late to learn how to love better. That night, after Emily went to bed, Samantha and Dakota talked about the vow renewal and how people could surprise you when they truly committed to change. "You know what impresses me most about your father," said Dakota. "What?" "That he had the courage to admit he was wrong. A lot of men his age would rather die than admit a mistake." "That's true. And he didn't just admit it, he made sure to make things right. That says a lot about his character deep down. I think there was always a good man inside my father. He was just hidden behind a lot of pride and insecurity. Like you." "Like me what?" "There was always a strong, confident woman inside you. She was just hidden behind a lot of pain and fear." Samantha thought about the comparison. It was interesting how everyone carried better versions of themselves, waiting to be discovered. "Maybe everyone is like that," she said. "Maybe we all have better versions of ourselves waiting for the right moment to emerge." "Could be. The trick is to create opportunities instead of waiting for them to appear." "Like you did for me?" "Like we did for each other." They fell asleep in each other's arms, as always. But that night, Samantha dreamed of a great celebration on the reservation, with people of all ages and backgrounds celebrating together, united by love and mutual acceptance. When she woke up, she realized the dream wasn't far from reality. Over the years, the reservation had become a gathering place for people from all walks of life, searching for a more authentic and connected way of living. The vow renewal ceremony for Richard and Jennifer took place on a perfect autumn afternoon. The whole reservation participated in the preparations, decorating the space with flowers and colorful fabrics, preparing traditional foods, and creating an atmosphere that blended Lakota elements with urban traditions. Richard was as nervous as a first-time groom. He had written his own vows and rehearsed them with Samantha many times. "What if I forget the words?" he asked for the 10th time. "Dad, you won't forget. And if you do, just speak from the heart. That's more important than memorized words. I'm afraid I won't be able to express everything I feel." The point isn't to say everything at once. It's to express it every day for the next 25 years. Richard smiled, visibly calmer. "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped thinking wisdom was having all the answers and started realizing it's about asking the right questions." The ceremony was moving. Richard spoke about the mistakes he'd made, the lessons he'd learned, and the man he wanted to be in the years ahead. Jennifer spoke about forgiveness, second chances, and how true love never gives up on people, even when they take time to learn. Willow led the Lakota portion of the ceremony, blessing the couple with sacred herbs and words of ancestral wisdom. The ritual created a bridge between cultures, perfectly symbolizing the family's journey. During the celebration that followed, Samantha watched the interactions among everyone present. Emily chatted easily with people of all ages. Richard and Jennifer danced like young lovers. Dakota played guitar, while others sang. It was exactly the kind of celebration she had always dreamed of, not lavish or extravagant, but full of genuine love and real connections. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked, walking up to her. "How beautiful it is to see love triumph over everything." "You mean your father and me? All of us. Every person here had to overcome something to get where they are, and they all chose love over fear, including you, especially me." They watched Richard playfully teaching Emily some dance steps he'd learned in his youth. "He loves you both so much," Jennifer observed. "I know. And we love him too. It took us a while to learn how to show it in a healthy way, but we got there. That's what family is, isn't it? Learning to love better every day." "Exactly." The celebration lasted late into the night. When everyone had finally left and the family gathered to clean up, there was a sense of completion, as if an important cycle had come full circle. "It was a beautiful celebration," Emily said, collecting decorations. "It was," Samantha agreed. "And you know what I liked the most?" "What?" "How everyone felt at home here, as if they were all part of the same big family." "We are, in a way," Dakota observed. "Family isn't just blood. It's a choice." Richard, who was helping gather the chairs, stopped to listen. "That's true," he said. "I've learned that family is who we choose every day to love and protect. And who chooses us back? Jennifer added. Emily hugged everyone at once, creating a group hug that lasted several minutes. It was a simple moment, but deeply meaningful. Thank you, she finally said. Why? They all asked at the same time, making her laugh. For teaching me that true love is this. It's not perfect, but it's real. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And it always includes second chances. Samantha felt tears in her eyes. Her daughter had grown up understanding lessons that had taken her decades to learn. Emily? Yes, Mum? You're ready to conquer the world? I am. But I'll always come back home, because I know this is where I belong, no matter where else I go. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Samantha stayed on the porch a little longer, reflecting on the journey that had brought her there. 15 years ago, she was a broken woman who believed she was unworthy of love. Today, she was surrounded by a family who adored her, had a confident and independent daughter, a solid marriage built on mutual respect, and even a reconciled relationship with her father. More important than any of that, she finally loved herself. Not in a narcissistic or arrogant way, but with the compassion one has for someone they truly value. She took care of herself, respected her own needs, stood by her opinions, and no longer allowed anyone to treat her as less than she deserved. The end of the story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of transformation and true love. Do you believe Samantha made the right decisions? Do you know someone who's gone through a similar journey of self-acceptance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I love reading your reflections. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this one.